What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the Game Week 38 preview. So as always, going to go through the big talking points ahead of Sunday's deadline. We've obviously got updates about Salah, some stuff about Kane as well, some last minute panic, and I'm going to answer all of your questions as well. So if you do enjoy the video, keep giving it a like. It really does help out, and make sure to subscribe as well if you haven't already. So let's start off with the Salah updates. The short answer is we still don't know if he's going to start, but Klopp did talk about him. I took these quotes from the Fantasy Football Scout Twitter account. Make sure you're following them if you're not already. So he was speaking about Salah, Van Dijk and Fabinho. It looks all good. What we do with them for the weekend, I have no idea, right? So he doesn't know if they're going to start or not. There were kind of further quotes and said he essentially, right, the short version is he understands that he's in a battle with Son for the Golden Boot, but there's no chance they're going to take any risk based on that. He also says Mo doesn't want to take any risk. There's no doubt about that. So obviously, winning the league and keeping Salah fit for the Champions League is the priority over Salah getting the Golden Boot. I think we can all assume that's the case. He then went on to say, it looks good, the boys make steps. We will see. My preferred solution would be they all could play at the weekend for rhythm reasons. I spoke about that earlier on in the week. Managers always talk about rhythm. Yes, at some points you have to rest players, but you don't want to rest them for large periods of time. You need them to be playing matches. He said stuff like this, or at least could be on the bench and then we can bring them on. But then he also said, or not. So we really don't know. He said, if not, then we take it from there. I cannot say 100%. So like I said yesterday, or maybe earlier team selection video, he's going to want to get them on the pitch, but there is no guarantee they start. So whether or not you should sell him really comes down to whether you think he will start. And I said this earlier, if you don't think Mo Salah is going to start, then you have to sell him. It's way too much money. There's way too many other good options. You cannot hold on to him. If we get early team news and he's starting, you could make a case to keep him because he would then be somewhat of a differential. Whether or not he would then stay on the pitch for kind of 70, 80, 90 minutes, if we take Klopp at his word, if it's still in doubt right now, I would say he's probably not going to play 90 minutes. So a Mo Salah that only plays 60, 65 minutes could still be great. But again, if it's the choice between him or Son for definite 80 to 90 minutes, I think you're taking Son every time, basically. So, yeah, on Salah, we've got an update. Doesn't necessarily help us. My view hasn't changed. If we do not know for sure, i.e. there's a leak, a reliable team leak ahead of the deadline, then, yeah, you've got to sell him. He's just too expensive to bench on the final day. Okay, I want to talk about some Harry Kane panic. I don't think there's anything to worry about, by the way, if you already own him or if you're wanting to buy him. But I did see quite a few people leave comments on my last video because of the rumours that kind of started going around where there might have been like a food poisoning outbreak at Spurs. I think that's kind of what, or how Gary Lineker put it. But Conte has spoken. He said, he confirmed that Harry Kane has been feeling unwell, but he expects him to be fit for Sunday's game against Norwich. Kane trained yesterday, so that would have been on Thursday, but pulled out of a media event. So that's kind of what was going around Twitter, that he had to pull out of an event and that he might be a doubt for this weekend. I did see one account say that he's got a virus and he's travelling separately, but I don't know how legit that is, so I don't really want to go into too much detail and pull it up. But as of right now, again, if we take Conte at his word, he should be fine for Sunday. There was kind of a follow-up as well. Spurs have got no new injuries, and he also confirmed that Harry Kane would stay on penalties, which is the least shocking news ever, despite the Golden Boot stuff. Look, maybe if they're 4-5, 6-0 up or something, maybe Kane would give him a penalty, but I still doubt it, even in that case, to be honest. And then Fantasy Football Scout put out the full quote. Yes, for sure. And this was on whether Kane will be available. Also, in the last game, Kulusevski had this problem. So it sounds like he's got the same problem Kulusevski had. He didn't train with us on Saturday, but on Sunday he was good to play. For sure, Harry doesn't want to miss this type of game. Honestly, I think he'd have to lose a leg before he didn't play in this game. Right? He's about to secure Champions League football for Spurs. Given all the stuff that went on for City, he's going to want to be there, and obviously then into next year as well. If you remember the last game against Burnley, we had 3 or 4 cases of stomach problems. In this week, I have to be honest, we had a couple of cases, but we overcame the situation. So it sounds like what Lineker said is kind of half right, but it doesn't sound like it's causing any issues to any of the players we'd be worried about right now. So Kane should be fine. Nothing about Son, nothing about Kulusevski. There wasn't anything about Sessegnon either. So I think Spurs are generally okay. And I don't think this would put me off buying Kane if I wanted him as a differential. And if I had him, I certainly wouldn't be selling. All right, let's get into some of your questions. So first up, who's the best Salah replacement? And if we have the money left over, do we take a hit to upgrade Watkins or Richarlison? So on on paper, the obvious best replacement for Salah is Son. And I don't even think it's that close to other players. There's a few players that are decent this week, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But Son, if you don't own him, is the obvious replacement, okay? We can talk about differentials. We can talk about how big the gap is that you're trying to make up in mini leagues or overall rank, and that might play a part in what you do. But if this was just a normal game week where we had another kind of 6 game weeks to come and Son had good fixtures, he would be the obvious replacement. He's obviously got Norwich away. Just to answer the second part of this question, I probably would, if I had the money, upgrade those 2 players for a hit. Because I think there's some pretty decent big hitters up front that you could go for this week. Now, if you don't want to go for Son, or you already own him, there is genuinely like so many players that you could pick this week. And he's very, like, again, on a normal week, let's say it's game week 20, you can look at the numbers, right, the player numbers, you can look at the fixtures that are coming up, you can look to see if there's European matches or double game weeks or blank game weeks and stuff like that, and you can really narrow down the list of players. But in the final game week, there genuinely is so many options because a lot of these players have nothing else to come apart from Liverpool after this game week. So for them to be rested or anything, it's probably not going to happen. You don't need to worry about what fixtures they've got in the future because it's just this week. So there are a lot of options. And to be honest, I could probably write a list that's 2 or 3 times as long as this, and they'd still be pretty good options for this week. So let me quickly just run through them and give you some really brief thoughts because I can't go through every single player in great detail. I do think Liverpool are going to do really well against Wolves. So Mane would probably be my preferred option if I'm not going to go for Son. Always seems to do well in game week 38 as well. If you wanted to go a bit cheaper to upgrade somewhere else, either in defence or another midfielder or even up front, whatever it might be, Luis Diaz is a nice alternative to Mane. And I do think they both start. I'd be very surprised if they don't. They missed the game against Southampton, so then they would have FA Cup on Saturday. They have their game against Wolves on Sunday, and then it's Champions League on Saturday. That is more than enough rest for these players. I'm like 99.999% sure they will start, and they're both really good options. Because even if Salah doesn't play, they should be able to score a few goals against Wolves. Havertz, I'm again pretty sure he's going to play. We're going to talk about possible Chelsea rotation later on. He hasn't played for a couple of games now. Lukaku has been playing a lot. Lukaku is on this list as well. So if you do go for a cheaper midfielder and you've got the money to upgrade up front and you didn't want to go for Harry Kane, like I know I've just talked about possible slight Kane doubts. I don't think that would affect me if I wanted to bring him in. But if you're unsure, you could go for Vardy or Lukaku instead. I would just have slight question marks over Lukaku starting again. He started a lot recently, and Havertz came on as a sub in the last game. I think he's going to play. He could play at the same. He could play in the same lineup as Lukaku, but recently it's been one or the other. So I think Havertz might get the start and possibly not Lukaku. De Bruyne is still a good option. Not necessarily massive differential, but differential enough. So you could go for him. Obviously, Vardy I just spoke about. I'd have question marks over Vardy's starting place as well. I know there's nothing else to play for. I know it's the last home game, but he has just played the last couple of games in a row, and he hasn't done that very often recently. So again, nice punt. But for players like Vardy and Lukaku on this list in particular, I'd kind of more want to know they're definitely going to start. With everyone else on the list, I'm fairly confident they will. Then you got Tony as a cheap option. Kulusevski, like for those of you that have sold him or never owned him, he could be like an alternative to Salah. Like obviously Salah to Kulusevski, then again spend that money elsewhere. Same with Foden and same with Maddison. Maddison may be similar to Vardy in that he's just played a couple of games in a row, and the turnaround time is Thursday to Sunday, but I think he'll play, so I'm not really too worried about him. It's Lukaku and Vardy on this list that I'm not sure about, but like I said, there is genuinely so many ways you could play this. A lot of it is going to come down to what the gap is that you're trying to close, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. There was a few questions on Chelsea. Obviously, a lot of people own Chelsea players. They're a little bit worried they're going to get rotated, or they want a piece of that Watford at home action. So the first question was, should we transfer in a Chelsea wingback without team news that they definitely start? So a lot of content creators, myself included, are going to talk about early team news in Game Week 38, but it is not guaranteed. I'd almost have like a priority order list or something. So 1, if I get this team news that I want, this is the move that I'll make. 2, if I don't get that team news, this is the move that I'm going to make instead, and that kind of thing. The second question was which Chelsea players, just overall, in order of preference. Now, there is one tweet that I wanted to talk about. Now, I don't follow this person, but a lot of people have tweeted me to say that he's legit, usually has good information. The only slight doubt I have, I can't find anyone else really talking about this. Like, where did Tuchel say this? But apparently, he said he's going to play players against Watford who haven't played much lately. So that probably means the likes of Sal, Barkley, Salah, etc. No excuse not to play a lot of youth players. You know they'll give way more effort and relish the opportunity than first teamers will do. Now, there are some players that we know Rudiger's leaving, so he'll probably start. There's a lot of question marks around whether Alonso's going to go, so whether he'll get a final farewell, I don't know. The honest answer is, if Tuchel did say this, there could be quite a lot of rotation. Like Azpilicueta could come in for Reece James, for example. Lukaku could drop out for Havertz, like I said. So it's difficult. Like right now, I couldn't even guess the lineup, but I can probably guess a few players. So would I buy Alonso or James this week without any information? I don't know if I would. Especially if I had the money to go to like double Liverpool defence instead. That maybe like if I could get Van Dijk or Robertson or Trent, if I don't own any of them, I'd probably do that instead. Like the annoying thing is, for anyone that doesn't own them, Alonso and James on paper are arguably the two best defenders this week, because that Watford at home game just looks so good. But Azpilicueta could definitely come in for James, and they could play someone else at left wing back. They have done that before. My only hope is, if it is Alonso's last game for Chelsea, that they will play him, right? And there's nothing to say that Alonso and James don't play, because they make him a much better team, like obviously with Chilwell injured, and they rotate everyone else. Just because he's going to play some young players or rotate some players that haven't played lately doesn't mean he's going to rotate the whole 11. So that's worth bearing in mind. It's very hard to know. Like, I own them both, and right now I'm going to start them both. But this is the team news I really want. I think Chelsea team news is the most important to me. So I would probably rethink my transfers. I don't know if I'd be confident enough to bring them in right now. My opinion and like maybe some information that comes in might change my mind by the deadline. That's just how I feel right now. In terms of which Chelsea players, Mason Mount has to be right at the top. I'm going to be so surprised if he doesn't start again after being a sub for the Leicester game. I really thought he was going to start that game. So Tuchel hasn't said anything about an injury or anything like that. So I think he's going to start the final game of the season. And I think he looks great. And not necessarily, I don't even know what his ownership is. Like, I'm just going to quickly look it up now. This is just overall ownership. It's probably fairly high, I'd say, because of the double game. Yeah, 21.5% overall. I'm sure that's maybe a little bit higher in the top 10k or whatever. But I think he has to be the best option. I think the second best is probably Havertz, because I do think he's going to get a start as well. And again, if you wanted to go major differential, then picking Havertz over Mount could be the one. I think there's a little bit more risk in it, because I think Havertz had just been back from an injury and stuff like that. But yeah, that's the kind of thing you got to think about in the last few... the last game week. So outside of Mount, James and Alonso, there aren't really too many other players that I'd want anyway, really. I mean, you could pick up a defender like Rudiger, like Azpilicueta, if you're thinking that they're going to start. But I'm not sure there's a huge amount on offer for them in this game. It's really the wing-back positions that I want. Maybe Azpilicueta will play right wing-back, and maybe he'll come in with the points, but I just don't know if that's where I'd be spending a transfer. So really it's Mount, Havertz for the differential, and James and Alonso if you want to risk it. Let's briefly talk about captaincy. I don't think this is going to take too long to go through. The obvious best captains this week are Son and Kane, because I mean, I can't really say there's no doubts about them because of that Kane stuff we spoke about earlier, but they're not just coming back from injuries like Salah. So Son and Kane against Norwich have to be the best captains. If they both start, if they both get a similar amount of minutes, honestly, just flip a coin. I couldn't even really break it down more than that. Obviously, Son gets the extra point for the goal, any clean sheet as well. Kane has penalties. I guess maybe over a period of time, the kind of extra point for the goal and stuff is a bit more reliable, because you never really know how many penalties you're going to get and when. And right now, if I had both and I wasn't worried about differentials or anything like that, I probably would favour captaining Son. But Kane is going to be the lower owned captain. So if you're looking to go a little bit different but not majorly different, Kane is probably the one to go for. I still think Salah, if we know he starts, is a genuinely good captain option this week. I know there's all this stuff about not being great since AFCON, hasn't scored a huge amount of open play goals. But on a one-game shootout against Wolves at home, final day... like, he's the kind of guy that can just go big, right? His numbers are great, 0.87 expected goal involvement per 90. That's for the whole season. So that's taking into account all this bad form that he's apparently in. The numbers have still been kept incredibly high. So if he starts and you want to be different, imagine saying that a few weeks ago, that Salah is a differential captain. But this week he will be. Again, sticking with that Wolves game, because I do think Liverpool will score a few. Mane looks really good as well. And then you've got De Bruyne and Mount as kind of just slightly differential options in terms of not necessarily their normal ownership, but in terms of the people that are going to captain them. And I really do, to be honest with you, I actually favour Mount over De Bruyne because although the expected goal involvement numbers listed there are all fairly good, and to be honest, fairly similar apart from Salah, De Bruyne's numbers are made up primarily from expected assists, not expected goals. And I know this is a crazy thing to say after only a couple of games ago he scored 4 goals. But in terms of goal threat, every player on this list is better than De Bruyne. And I know he's good at picking up bonus. So if he gets like an assist and a goal, he'll probably get the 3 bonus points and it could be a big haul. But if I'm looking for a captain on the last day, I want someone that's going to go and get me a goal, which is why Son, Kane, Salah and Mane are top of the list. And actually, it's not really in order, but I guess it kind of is. And that's probably why I put Mount ahead of De Bruyne. I think Watford at home is definitely easier than Villa at home. There's also nothing riding on it, and that can sometimes be a good thing, sometimes be a bad thing, right? If the team is fully changed and there's not really a lot to play for, you don't know how they're going to perform. But at the same time, the kind of pressure's off, the reins are off, whatever. And so I think in some ways I do prefer Mount to De Bruyne captain. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that would be famous last words, but I've just got a feeling about that Chelsea game. I mean, it's not even a feeling, right? It's Watford at home who are relegated and keep getting battered. So, yeah, I think I prefer Mount over De Bruyne. But the top 4, if Salah starts, of course, that's why the asterisk is there, are definitely the best 4 this week, I would say. All right, here we go. Mini League Tactics. It's the final game week, the last time to secure bragging rights ahead of next season. Should I try and cover someone only 8 points behind me in my Mini League, or should I play my own game? So it's really going to depend on who the player is, right? So if you know that somebody is going to bring in a player and you think, well, I've got to block them, then you could bring them in if you're fairly sure you know who they're going to go for. Bearing in mind, they're going to be thinking, well, the person above me is thinking this, so I'm going to go a bit different. So I would tend to stick to playing my own game when it's only an 8-point lead. But again, if it's covering a player they already own who you know they're not going to take out, and if it's a big player, you could cover it, right? So for example, and maybe this is an extreme example, if they've got Son and you don't, that's kind of a player that I wouldn't want to let loose, right? That is an 8-point gap that could easily be closed. If they've got, say, Joel Matip, I'm not sure I'd go out of my way to cover that. So it is going to depend on the player. For me, an 8-point gap is not that big that I'd worry too much about covering. I think you've almost just got to hope that things go your way and that you remain in the league and that the person behind you kind of messes up. If you've got like a 20 to 30, maybe even more point lead, well, I mean, if you've got a more than a 30-point lead, you're probably not going to lose it. But let's say it's kind of 15 to 25, then I think blocking becomes a little bit more of a kind of better tactic. But it's still going to depend on who or like which player you're blocking. So if they're 15 points behind, and you know, for example, they're going to go for Mason Mount, who I've talked about quite a lot this week. Again, that seems like a player that could do damage. I might just bring them in, especially if I know that my team is better than theirs. After that, it's all just hoping for a bit of luck, right? So it's all going to depend, but 8 points is not that much. I would probably veer more towards playing my own game, unless it's a big hitter that they're going to bring in or they've already got that you don't. Okay, so this is less mini league, more overall rank. If I'm 15 points off of the top 10k, should I stick with Son captain or twist? And obviously this can apply to any rank that you're trying to get to. So if you're trying to get top 10k, top 20, 30, 40, etc. Even if it's to get your first top 100k finish, it doesn't matter. Everyone has different expectations. Everyone has different goals at the end of the season. So depending on how many points off you are, could determine what you do. For what it's worth, I'm 11 points off. So I'm 4 points better off than you right now. That could be different by the end of Sunday's games. And I am kind of siding right now with not taking a hit and getting Son in and just captaining him and hoping that the rest of my players just do the business. So if I just bring up my team really quickly, I've not made my transfers. I won't do it till Sunday. There's just no reason whatsoever. I'll just hope for some early team news. Like, I'm looking at this team. Let's say, I know it's not likely, but let's say that everybody starts, right? Rafinha, differential. Again, I'm not just talking about players that are only 1 or 2% owned. I'm just talking about players that are not, you know, more than kind of 60, 70, 80% owned in the top 10k. I've not double checked, but I'm going to assume, right? Rafinha, definitely a big differential. Nketiah, maybe not quite as much of a differential, but he's still not going to be as highly owned as Saka. Foden is definitely a differential. And I would say the double up of Alonso and James, if they both went big, that would also be pretty decent. I've got double City defence, but I expect a lot of people have got that. I've got double Liverpool defence. Again, I expect a lot of people have got that. So I'm essentially hoping that Rafinha, or maybe Kulusevski if I swap, Nketiah, Foden, Alonso and James end up making up the difference. Because although that team, for the most part, looks template, when you add it all together, there won't be many other teams with that exact team, right? Not enough where a good score doesn't have the chance to get me in the top 10k. So one thing I would definitely think about is how many differential players you've got. That's why I'm thinking of going with Son. You're 15 points off. I know it's only an extra 4 points, but I would possibly start thinking about going somewhere a little bit differential. But it is going to depend on what your team looks like. I put this together. I'm not sure just how accurate or how good it is, but it's kind of a rough guide, right? So if you're 1 to 10 points behind whatever rank you're trying to chase, I think you just play your own game. If you think Son is the best captain, you just captain Son and you hope that the rest of your players get one over on everyone else above you, right? Because again, for my team, if Rafinha happens to smash it or Kulusevski happens to smash it and someone like Mason Mount ends up blanking, that's a pretty big difference for me, right? And you've just, again, it's a bit like the Maddison and Vardy thing from Game Week 37 and the De Bruyne thing from Game Week 36. You make some good picks and you just hope for a slice of luck in the final game week. If you're 11 to 20 off, you could then start thinking about a different captain. I'm 11 points off. I'm kind of sticking more with playing my own game, but different captain or 1 to 2 players different. If it's 21 to 30, I'd start thinking about a different captain and definitely trying to get in some players that are very low owned. Again, it doesn't have to be 5-10%, but I think you definitely want some players in that are kind of less than 40 or 50% owned in the rank you're trying to get. And you can check websites like Live FPL to get that information. I think 31 to 40, I'd certainly be looking for a very low owned captain differential or someone that no one else is going to captain, even if it's someone like Mount, maybe not quite De Bruyne, maybe someone like Foden, Saka. I mean, Saka's highly owned, but he ain't going to be highly captained. So that could be a nice little differential. But you've still got to hope that all the obvious captains blank. So again, you really, like, when you're looking for 31 to 40 points, you're hoping for a lot of luck. It's possible, but it's difficult. If you're on 41 plus, just do whatever and just hope for the best. Because honestly, you're not probably going to make that up in 1 week. I know there's been some big swings recently, but that's been bench boosts, that's been captains in double game weeks, that's been free hits in double game weeks. This is just a single game week. To make up 41 plus in a single week doesn't happen that often, but I wish you the best of luck if you're going to try that. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please do give it a like and hit that subscribe button. I will hopefully be back tomorrow with a Race to World #1 video. I don't know if I'm going to do a second video tomorrow. I don't know if there's enough more stuff to talk about. Did that even make good? That wasn't even good English, was it? But anyway, if something breaking news comes out, I might do a second video tomorrow. But otherwise, Race to World #1 tomorrow. Deadline stream on Sunday. Watch along on Sunday. Final end of season stream on Sunday. There's a lot of content still to come. So hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and I'll catch you again soon.